All right, welcome to episode 58 of the Breaking Balls podcast. Bob, in one of the most unlikely resurrections since Vince McMahon's limo exploded on Monday Night Raw, North Wilkesboro is back, and Kyle Larson's back in victory lane.
Yeah, more like Shane McMahon ad. Young Money comes away with the $1 million check on Sunday night, sweeps the weekend at North Wilkesboro. Good news is Ross Chastain, not the news this week. Bad news is we really don't have anything to talk about. Or do we? Hit it, Dolly.
Flags in the air. Boogity, boogity, boogity. Let's go racing, boys.
Well, regretfully, those are 3 more boogities than you got with DW in the booth today, but we are back for episode 58 of the Breaking Balls podcast. Bob, that race happened.
It happened. A lot of nostalgia. Great to be back at North Wilkesboro. I was 7 months old the last time that the NASCAR Cup Series was there, so I'll be honest with you, I don't remember that day very vividly, but obviously Jeff Gordon won, so I was a happy young lad that day. Yeah, we'll get into some of the action on and off the track. It feels like we're going to be talking a little bit more off the track with, obviously the nostalgia there, but again, it felt like DW had one job. I needed a boogity tonight, and I didn't get it, so at least we got it on the podcast. Feels right.
Kind of wild to just put him in the booth and not let him do it. It kind of felt like, almost like having a racehorse sitting in a starting gate and then just telling him, you actually can't race. Sorry, we're gonna have to go ahead and bring you back to the barn and put you down. So that kind of was sad. Hated to see that. But luckily for you, Bob, I was 3 months old the last time that NASCAR was at North Wilkesboro, and I remember all of it. So I've got a real good recollection of this track. It really just came right back to me from the very second that they started racing. And, I'll say this, it looked like it was going to be a pretty interesting race. But, Bob, when Kyle Larson makes the best decision on pit road in a race, chances are he's gonna end up taking advantage of it. And I think that's just what we saw today.
Yeah, you give one of the best drivers in North America, obviously, an advantage on tires early. Really bad news for the rest of the field when it really is a track that tire wear is a big deal. And it was evident once, that spin happened around, what was it, lap 15-ish I guess. Stenhouse and Jones got together. Kyle Larson just was on a different level compared to the rest of the field there. And, obviously Suarez led the first 50-some laps. And then it was the Kyle Larson show, and he didn't look back. On his way to his third All-Star win. That man is rich off of just All-Star wins. $3 million in the bank. I know he won the Eldora race a couple of years ago on the dirt side, the Sprint Car Series. That's a $1 million check as well. So just off of victory winnings here, the man's going to be able to retire pretty early here. So dominant win. If you watched, even half the race, I feel like it's not a shock there.
No, I agree 100%. Dominant win, dominant weekend, really. I mean, we'll get into it a little bit later, but Kyle Larson did end up sweeping North Wilkesboro. Largely he used a good deal of the grip strip, as Quid Boyer loved to call it, in the middle of the race. Just kept going on down to that grip strip, finding a little bit of traction and really coming off that corner pretty hard. And, that it just felt like time after time listening to Quint describe the grip strip has really given me an affinity for that. I don't know if it's because it rhymes or what it is, but it just seemed like Quint Boyer was so excited about this, and rightfully so, because it was giving Kyle Larson so much speed, and he was the first one to really go down there and test that limit. And in large part, that was because he raced in the truck race, kind of knew that if they set the car up correctly, which he admitted it on the radio in the first part of the race, he simply didn't have any car. He didn't have any car the first 15 laps. So probably give 100K of that to Rick, maybe fix 50-50 to Ricky Stenhouse and Eric Jones, because that really let Kyle Larson back into the race, and he dominated from there. Truly an incredible performance from one of the greatest racers in the world.
And you saw a couple of guys kind of take advantage of that caution there. Bubba Wallace was obviously the main one that comes to mind. Obviously, 23-11 going 2 and 3 there with him and Tyler Reddick. Those guys made sure they took advantage of that. But, they always said going into the weekend the tires were going to last about, 30-ish laps on a given run, a green flag run. So to see a caution come out on lap 15 and only a handful of guys come in, when there's only 24 cars out there on the track, I was kind of shocked to see that. But, at the end of the day, outside of that caution, and then you get the all-star caution at lap 100 or whatever it was there, that was the only time that you could come in there and really work on your car, throw on new tires. And I mean, at the end of the day, that was the $1 million call there for the 5 team. It just happened to be early in the race, a lot earlier than we thought it would be.
Yeah, it's not oftentimes you see a decision to win a race on lap 15, but that's exactly what happened here. And, it's kind of shocking, to see a caution that early in a race. Usually guys kind of play a little bit nicer. So I think it just goes to show you the small arena that they were in with North Wilkesboro. And, Bob, I think what was even more shocking was there was a caution and Ross Chastain just straight up wasn't involved this time. I mean, pretty quiet day from him. I mean, we talked about it in the intro a little bit, but he behaved. He definitely behaved.
We'll probably lose about 10 minutes on this podcast from the last couple weeks here, but that's okay. We get a little bit more of our Sunday night back here, Ad. But yeah, even around guys like Joey Logano when they were kind of beating and banging, and especially at a track like North Wilkesboro where it's similar to Bristol and Martinsville, it's a 1-lane track. I mean, very unforgiving. If you get sent to the outside, you're going to have to put the bumper to the guys to move up in the field, and that's kind of a Ross Chastain aggressive MO, and you didn't get that tonight. So he well behaved tonight. Realistically, I know there wasn't a lot of on-track action as far as passing here once the tires got set, but it felt like the drivers themselves, and maybe it's not a viewership gold mine there, but it felt like the drivers did have to fight the cars today, didn't it? Like it just felt like they were the ones struggling today, whether the viewers were kind of struggling to watch the last couple laps there or not, but the drivers were the ones that were kind of giving it their all today.
Yeah, it was evident in watching veterans like, you watch Kevin Harvick, who has busier hands in the car, don't get me wrong, but he was working to try and turn that thing all day. Really had to kind of rely on the engine to position his car to really get in and out of the corners. Not his best day, but yeah, I just think the way that for the first time in this NASCAR season, at quite possibly some of the slowest speeds, we saw guys actually have to struggle to hold on to the car and like come out of the corner and not have to worry about, or having to worry about how much throttle they're putting into it. Because if you spin the tires there, I mean, especially if you're going uphill at North Wilkesboro, it just is going to kill every bit of momentum you have. And just to have a track like this that eats up tire, I think, was this race perfect? No, absolutely not. But this doesn't change a thing about the next gen car. You still need a track that will eat tire.
And that was one of the concerns going into the weekend is the track going to hold up? This surface hasn't really been touched on. I mean, Dale Jr. was weed eating the track 4 years ago. I mean, the surface, let's not call it what it was. It wasn't in the best shape. And there was even in, Tuesday, Wednesday night on the Cars Tour races and the other races, there was kind of pavement come up. We were worried, is the track going to hold up for all week? And in the Cup Series, track held up fine. I mean, whether they repave moving forward or not, that's another whole different debate there. But no, I mean, as far as, like you said, it tore up the tires, but it was an old school NASCAR race. And sometimes the old school NASCAR races weren't the most entertaining to watch, but inside the car, it was a grueling battle there. And I feel like, today you got to see guys like Kyle Larson excel at that.
I think a lot of NASCAR's product, one of the things that I think a lot of fans will complain about is that the product has kind of started to feel a little disingenuous. It feels like with the stage racing and different things, NASCAR is trying to manufacture a lot of drama. And I don't know what it was about them racing at North Wilkesboro. It just felt old school. I think obviously, the older venue helps, but it just felt like you said, was it the most interesting race? No, but I couldn't take my eyes off of it just because of the spectacle of it all. I think the track did such a good job of and the broadcast especially really did a good job of highlighting what makes that place very special. It was evident.
And you only got the one stage break caution halfway through, so you didn't get, all the different stage cautions that kind of slow a race down there for good or for worse. You had Clint Boyer basically begging for a caution the last about 15 laps there, watching if anyone was close to the bumper. He was basically trying to will one in there. But yeah, it wasn't like it wasn't the most entertaining race, but like you couldn't take your eyes away. Just whether it was visually, just seeing the nostalgia, obviously the backdrop with the sun setting Sunday night in the Carolinas, kind of get that old school NASCAR feel. It feels like you're in a time machine, but also bringing the present and kind of meeting that. So, will it work again? It's hard to say. I feel like it's more, to be honest with you, the car's problem. I don't think it's a track issue because we saw that in the trucks yesterday with 12 cautions. We'll get into a little bit later, but I don't think it's the track's fault that the short track racing isn't great on the next gen car.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% there. I think one of the thoughts that kind of came to my mind when you were talking there, for whatever reason, I'm not necessarily even sure why, but I think what was interesting for me is that you expected kind of the older guard in NASCAR to kind of perform a little bit better on this track, and it didn't make a ton of sense because obviously it's been such a long time that like even guys like Kyle Busch and stuff they've never really raced here, especially Cup. So it's like I don't know what I was expecting out of this track, or who would maybe have an advantage other than Kyle Larson because he's the best race car driver in the world. And I think that when you go and do exhibitions like this, it really allows for the drivers to shine through. And I think Kyle Larson truly just kind of took the race by the horns today and reminded everybody that in this All-Star race, I'm still the cream of the crop. I am him.
You mentioned you thought a lot of the vets would show up. I mean, guys like Kevin Harvick, 18th, Keselowski, 19th, Kyle Busch, 22nd, even Joe Logano, 10th, wasn't the best day for him. These are guys that you expect, especially on the short tracks, where it's a lot more in the driver's hands to perform it. Instead you had Chase Briscoe 4th, Daniel Suarez 7th, Eric Jones 8th. Eric Jones hasn't had a great season yet this year. The last couple of weeks, it feels like Legacy started to trend a little bit better, but I mean, historically, the guys that have performed better at these tracks did show up tonight. And I don't know if that was the All-Star format. I really don't know.
Yeah, I think it was really kind of crazy to see Chase Briscoe's car settle in. I mean, because it was noticeable on the broadcast. His car just finally settled in, and he started wheeling that thing. I think, it was very cool to kind of see a Ford that's not named Kevin Harvick. I know we talk about this every week, up and being competitive, and I think that's good for Ford moving forward. But Bob, you talked about Legacy Motor Club because we can't call him Petty Johnson, apparently. I don't know. Apparently that's not their name. Whatever. They had success in the big race. They had more success in the open race. I think, that seems like a good transition into it. Not a ton meat left on the bone from the Cup race. So, Bob, at least there was a little bit of a conflict here between probably the one guy in the garage that I don't think anybody has any bones messing with, and Ty Gibbs. It was Michael McDowell and Ty Gibbs. What did you make of it, Bob?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you've got to survive the open to get into the field there, and it looked like it was dicey for both these fellas. And at the end of the day, Michael McDowell's car barely was running at the end. He could barely control it in those corners at the last open race there. But I mean, Ty Gibbs ended up finishing 9th in the actual All-Star race, by the way. Got to give him credit where credit's due there, but very random rivalry. I wouldn't expect this. Apparently, Gibbs said at the post-open race interview on pit road that they had some kind of they came together last week or the week before, and so he said hopefully we're even now. But Michael McDowell just had some different ways to see it, I guess, didn't he?
I'm gonna call this feud. I've already got it dubbed. We're going to call this one the Crusade, Bob, because it's two very Christian men of God fighting with each other. Deuce Volt, boys. Let's see how it goes. I don't know what's going to come of this in the future, but boy, oh boy, am I excited. Hang on. If you had these two on your bingo card, you didn't. You simply didn't. I mean, I don't know. I think the last time Michael McDowell punched somebody in the face, it sent a very clear message. And I'm not sure if Ty Gibbs has checked the tape, but he may want to go back and check that tape because it seemed like an irresponsible thing for him to do.
I can't believe that you call this rivalry the Crusade. We'll skate over that here, I guess. The winner of the Crusade, I guess, at the end of the day was Josh Berry. So, obviously, in the 48 car, he had the lead. He kind of gave the lead to Ty Gibbs. I think he knew that Ty was going to be the quicker car, that he didn't want to burn the tires up. And I mean, man, chest level move by Josh Berry, whether he knew or not that Michael McDowell was. I mean, you know, obviously the interaction before where Michael McDowell and Haley get together. Ty Gibbs is all over the back of him. That's short track racing, but it's an aggressive move from a young driver that hasn't earned the benefit of the doubt from the veterans. And he found out the hard way that when you're leading a race like that, these veterans don't just move over like some of the guys he's raced with in the past, whether that's Arca or Xfinity. I mean, man, McDowell just went after him. I'm shocked the 54 even held up the way it did. That's, I guess, just the next gen's durability there.
Yeah, it's. I don't think Ty Gibbs has ever really been challenged a whole lot on a lot of racetracks strictly because of what his last name is, and I think you're going to get none of that slack with Michael McDowell. So I think this is a rivalry that oddly enough feels like it needs to happen for Ty Gibbs' development. I don't necessarily know why that feels like a responsible thing for me to say, but it kind of does feel like he needs to kind of get into it with a little bit of the old guard and kind of be put in his place a little bit. I mean, all credit to Ty Gibbs because, like you said, at the end of the day, he finished ninth in this race, which he's been sneaky. We've been talking about it all year. He's just been sneakily just kind of getting finishes, and at the end of the day, as long as he keeps performing, he'll keep himself in the conversation. And I don't know, Bob. It's always interesting when Ty Gibbs is involved, but we'll have to wait and see.
Outside of that, it felt like the open race was more entertaining than the the actual All-Star race, which seems to be the theme sometimes, just because these guys are obviously racing aggressive just to get in. You got to remind some of these guys that you have to have a car that is capable of driving, though, in the All-Star race, and half the field got eliminated before they could even win the fan vote there. So Noah Gragson, even Noah Gragson it was hairy there for a minute there. He had to work on the car before the actual All-Star race, but again, it just felt like the open race year after year does kind of seem like it brings a little bit more on-track action than the actual All-Star race.
Yeah, you just can't fake that sense of urgency that the open race kind of brings, because if you do not qualify, you're going home. You're not racing. And I think that, that's the type of urgency that NASCAR kind of can benefit from, because that's a genuine buildup, or that's a genuine thing to kind of market, because at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot of unhappy people going home, and you can't fake that urgency. I think it's something the sport needs a little bit more of. But yeah, I would agree with you 100%. I think the Open was definitely more entertaining to watch, strictly because they needed to care. They needed to win. They needed to get in those qualifying positions and move on.
And even on Saturday, the truck race was fairly entertaining compared to the All-Star race, which obviously the trucks are a point race, so there's a lot more on the line there. But we touched on it earlier. Kyle Larson sweeping the weekend there. Not a total shock there. Back to back now. Kyle Larson now with 2 wins in a row in the truck series there, with Darlington and now North Wilkesboro. It feels like the Cup regulars are starting to seep their way back into the lower series here, Ad.
Yeah, this is definitely a conversation that I've been anticipating having, especially after the week that Kyle Larson had after winning at Darlington, going on to win a sprint car race in the middle of the week, and then obviously sweeping the weekend here. It was a really good day to be a Cup driver or a yellow flag if you were at the truck race, because that's just about everybody who was successful. The truck race on that type of track, you're kind of just you're stirring the pot. Let's face facts. It's the Coke and Mentos of like a series right now, because there's just so many volatile things, like people moving around each other. And, you kind of see the Cup guys who have the experience to come down there and navigate it. But it's a bit of a demo derby down there right now, Bob. I think something like, I don't know, how many cautions? 12? It was absurd.
12, yep. 12 cautions, yep. At the end of the day, it came down to kind of a late race caution where Bubba Wallace stayed out and really held off the field for a good 15, 20 laps. But I guess it was 13 laps he led there at the end. Then Kyle Larson ends up pulling away there. William Byron led some laps there. It felt like Larson, Byron were the 2 fastest cars. Ty Majeski obviously had a good chance there toward the end, had a fast car, but at the end of the day, that that number 7 Larson, that Hendrick cars trucks mouthful. It's weird seeing on
Hendrick.
the scheme on a truck twice, let alone not
Well,
once,
I was gonna
twice
say
with
NASCAR
Byron.
Twitter is
But
gonna lose their mind and this isn't Formula One, da 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 da. But yeah, two
I love that meme.
Hendrickscars.com Chevrolet trucks. Yeah, is that
Rick Hendricks in the business is selling anything, my friend. If it's at the dealership and it has a key, he will sell it to you. But yeah, I mean, you look at the top 11 here. You have Larson, you have Wallace, Chastain, and Byron. I'm making it the top 11 to make it convenient because Byron's 11th there. But even Matt DiBenedetto third there. He's got Cup experience. Carson Hocevar was the guy that I was impressed with. Did lead a few laps, stayed in the top 10 most of the day, and a guy that's an aggressive driver, no lie, no bones about it there.
no cap?
Really kept it clean. No, kept it clean there. No cap at all. Did keep it clean there. I mean, and a guy that runs the same paint scheme as Ross Chastain, you almost are waiting for the wreck there. But a good day for Carson Hocevar, and a guy that needs runs like that to not only get the experience but also get the goodwill in the garage.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I will say this, Bob: should we have the conversation about if having the Cup drivers kind of come down and invade the lower series, or are we going to start having that conversation again? Does this feel like something we need to talk about?
It's tough. I mean, obviously they have it to where you can only do I think it's 3 to 5 races. I need to double check the actual number there per year in each series. So it's tough. Obviously, you could make the argument it's good for these younger guys to get to rub elbows and race guys like Kyle Larson and William Byron. But at the end of the day, you see the Cup regulars come in and just win these races. Obviously, Larson back to back now. It depends on how you want to frame it there. I'm okay with it as long as it's capped to a degree. I think the Kyle Busch rule was probably for the best there, even if some of those guys like Keselowski and Kyle Busch were absolutely dominating back in the 2010s.
Yeah, I just don't know exactly where I sit with it. I think ultimately, you see the Cup drivers more willing to come down and drive the trucks and to drive the Xfinity car just because I think they have more fun driving that car, which I think is a huge issue. But, nothing that we can talk about that we haven't already said on NASCAR, maybe changing up the next gen car, giving us a little more horsepower. And I think the other thing we kind of got to consider here is a little bit of recency bias. Obviously, having Kyle Larson go down and win every single time he's, past 2 weeks. And just to see that consistently, I think anytime that happens, you see Cup guys consistently winning at the lower levels, you're going to have to start having this conversation boil up.
Yeah, and we forget, last year, I believe it was Watkins Glen, where Ty Gibbs, who was an Xfinity regular at the time and going for the Xfinity championship, went to Watkins Glen and beat William Byron and Kyle Larson straight up in the truck. So, it's great for guys to get that experience at the end of the day. It just can't become a regular thing, where they're in every week. But I think they've got it to a degree right now where it is good for, balance. Like I said, just to rub elbows, but also not overkill there. I do have to mention here, we were hard on them to start the season. I think a lot of people were. Got to give a little credit here. Fox's broadcast has picked up the last few weeks. Quality, whether it's the pre-race, the actual race, it was impressive this weekend. I got to say, it didn't actually deter, which that's got to be all you ask from Fox at this point. Mike Joy hasn't yelled at me in a couple weeks. Things seem to be a little bit smoother there at old Fox.
Yeah, NASCAR race day didn't seem angry. Was actually just super informative, very pleasant. One of those things, really were emphasizing the nostalgia of the track incredibly well. And I mean, just that 4 wide shot of Mike Joy, Larry McReynolds, Larry Mack, baby, DW, and then Clint Boyer, our weird stepdad there at the end, who we didn't necessarily want to include in the Christmas card, but we're going to get him anyway because your mom's dating him. They did a really good job with the nostalgia and Clint.
They balanced it well. I mean, you had the throwback weekend with Darlington last week, so if you didn't get enough of it, you definitely got the access this weekend. This was a culmination of NASCAR's past meeting the present, and they really did, show the history of North Wilkesboro. And obviously, 27 years. That's an incredible time to go from absolutely nothing on track to, hey, we're back, we're rolling. I mean, obviously there was a couple of races last year, smaller series, but I mean, this track has been DOA for years, and to have it back, I mean, it was a great event. It was a made-for-TV event. Obviously, the crowd was packed. Yeah, the numbers may be the same attendance-wise as Texas, but it looks better on TV to have NASCAR, one, go back to its roots southern-wise in the hills of North Carolina, but also to have it at a track that has been there for so long. It just made for TV event.
And just the way that seeing, it doesn't matter how big they are, seeing full grandstands at NASCAR events is something that this sport just needs more of. It's just the perceived value of understanding that this is an event that if it comes to your town, you simply cannot miss it. And I think, yeah, it was a smaller grandstand, don't get me wrong, but through all the headaches and stuff that going to a race at this racetrack was going to cause, you were going to spend a lot of money. You're not going to have the amenities that you have at other tracks. You're going to have a lot of trouble getting in and out of the parking lot. They have made no bones about that this entire time. And yet that entire grandstand was full. There was not an empty seat the entire race. And I think just to see that on TV is something that this sport hasn't had in a very long time, and it needs to go back to it. It just felt right.
Again, like you said, seeing the stands full, it's a great thing for the sport. You have a lot going on around the track because, obviously the amenities, it may not be, world class, but they put a lot of money into renovating it. So they put a lot of fanfare. They put a lot of nostalgia in the concerts each night. People are paying $300 for a weekend ticket. They want to be entertained. They want to have things to do than just watch the Cup Series race on Sunday. So even the pit crew challenge on Friday night, I love, making something different from a weekend event like this. Not sure if you caught the pit crew challenge or not, but it's great to highlight some of those guys. You see them every week, but you only highlight them when they're the scapegoats usually. So it was nice to change it for a second and celebrate these guys because it's a team sport.
And not only that, just to give them the opportunity to really dedicate an entire broadcast to what those guys do on, because, we usually see pit stops and it's kind of an afterthought. The only time you really think about pit stops is if something goes wrong. So if you lose a tire or your driver speeds or, if it costs you time, that's really kind of the only reason that you even begin to think about crew members. And I just think events like this go a long way for making the casual fan appreciate what the jack man, the tire changer, and everything, just the way that the amount of practice that takes to get correct is so underrated. So just to get them, even though they may not get enough time on every broadcast, I think just to have the emphasis on them just once a year like this, it's a really nice accent to remind everybody, hey, this is a team sport from the garage to right there behind the pit wall to the driver in the seat. I mean, everybody's got to perform in order to get a win.
And like you said, most of the time you only see them when they're the scapegoat, when there's a mistake. And there's 6 to 7 at least guys on these teams. Most of them are former college athletes. I mean, these guys are scouted for their athletic ability. Nowadays, it's not just old mechanics that can work on the car. These guys are in these shops 4 or 5 days a week training for, these pit stops. And, to see the pit crew challenge and everyone on, the microscope, you get one shot here. And only a handful of teams made it through without a mistake at. It was impressive. I mean, it just goes to show that even with 6, 7 guys working as a team right there, to have the perfect stop, everything has to go right. And even then, it's so rare.
Yeah, it was just one of those things that they were moving so quickly and pushing it to such an extent that you knew that it was kind of like watching a driver go out there and kind of like ride that line of on the edge of losing it and kind of, and putting themselves around or holding on to it and making fast time. It was just, I don't know, Bob, like you said, I think these guys are just so athletic. I would even venture to say that if you are on a NASCAR pit crew today, you are probably more of an athlete than Tony Stewart ever was. And I said it. And I don't even think Tony Stewart has a leg to stand on to fight that. I just think these guys, if they weren't on NASCAR pit crews, they would probably be playing in the XFL, the USFL, things like that. But they just have found a way to use their athletic ability to instead of to just kind of give up on a dream, give up on any sort of athleticism, NASCAR is doing a really good job of finding these guys and saying, hey, your athletic career doesn't have to end. It's going to look a hell of a lot different, but it doesn't have to end.
And again, it's just a cool way to make a weekend different. The All-Star weekend, it highlights everyone here. It's a cool way to do a broadcast on Friday night and still have, on-track action there and something different. I love that. Obviously, Ty Gibbs winning that, he named the whole pit crew. They said that a lot of guys can't name the pit crew. I'm curious to know how many guys could name their pit crew. That's something that would be interesting to kind of survey the garage they're at. But, one thing I do have to mention here about the broadcast before we kind of move into next week here, if there's anything else I missed. I don't know if you noticed this, but we didn't get a Heart Like a Truck commercial once this broadcast window. And I, for one, am salivating. I'm gallivanting. I'm parading around. I'm happy. I didn't have to hear Heart Like a Truck and that screech of a commercial from Dodge. Thank you, FS1. Thank you, Fox. Finally. Oh.
Bob, I don't know why Lainey Wilson haunts our dreams the way that she does, but I feel like if I just hear one more in the middle of a broadcast, I may never watch a race. I don't know, man. It's getting to the point where it's like I've always said, they're not in the sport.
I'll turn on the NBA. I'll turn on the NBA at this point. I don't care.
Dude, I know we're not going to get a heart. We're not going to get a Heart Like a Truck commercial during the NBA game. I'll say that much. But Bob, the way that I'm just so thankful that Dodge isn't allowed. I don't know if this is even a conscious decision, but just not allowing Dodge to advertise during NASCAR races. Either jump in the pool or get the fuck away from the pool. That's all I'm going to say to Dodge is if you want to be involved in the sport, don't advertise during it. Come be a part of the sport.
Well, I'm sure we'll hear it on the broadcast moving forward this week because there's a lot of racing going on. Memorial Day weekend, if you're a race fan, Memorial Day Sunday is probably one of the best days of the calendar year for you. Obviously you've got Monaco, the F1 Grand Prix in the morning. I know it's the Red Bull Parade ad, but some cool yachts. It's a beautiful looking race.
No, I'm sorry. You just had me very confused. You called it F1, and then I remembered you called it the Red Bull Parade, and it kind of spurred my memory. I apologize. Go ahead.
There you go. I'm going to go ahead and assume the podium is Verstappen, Perez, and we'll go Alonso. But anyway,
Alonso. I like
pick
Alonso.
your poison of those three. Yeah, we'll throw that in there. But obviously, you get that as the morning, the breakfast, your midday, the Indy 500, one of the best races in the whole world. I mean, they were hitting 240. I saw 240, 242 going into turn 3 today. Average lap time. I saw Alex Palou set the Indy record for 4 laps today. Almost over 234 miles an hour for 4 laps. I mean, just
we are the Jack
ridiculous.
Nicholson. We are the Jack Nicholson meme right now, Bob. It's
just smile and nod.
Smile and nod, baby.
I mean it's insane, dude. It's insane.
If you don't have your eyes on that IndyCar race at the Indy 500 this weekend, you're just wrong. If you call yourself a race fan and you're not watching the Indy 500, you are wrong because this is going to be incredible.
And the intro to that race, even if you don't watch the full race, the intro to the race, they start 3 wide for about 7-8 rows, maybe more. I mean, it's chaotic. Watching those cars just basically tiptoe and ballet around each other at almost rocket-like speeds. It's incredible. And then obviously the marathon, the gauntlet, one of NASCAR's crown jewels to end the night. If you're still awake by then, you got 600 miles of the Coke 600 down in Charlotte Motor Speedway, NASCAR's hometown. And it's going to be a fun week, and we might even talk about it a little bit before the weekend. We'll see.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe an extra show? Bonus? Who knows? I guess we'll have to wait and see. You'll have to check under your pillows.
A lot to look forward to, though. A lot to look forward to. Again, if you're a motorsports fan, the month of May is obviously it's your bread and butter. It's what you look forward to every year. So we are right in the middle of it. Nostalgia week, I guess. We're not doing another throwback weekend next week at the Coke 600, are we? Are we finally done? Are we finally moving on and we're staying in the present for NASCAR?
I'd like to hope so, but at this point, we're still in Charlotte, and I'm sure we'll have to hear about the history of NASCAR just a little bit more. I'm just not sure how committed they'll be to it. But after the results this week, I wouldn't be shocked if they go back to the well for a third time.
Well, as long as it gets more Larry Mack on my TV, I am here for it. I don't care what it takes. I want that man on my screen 24/7. I don't care what it is.
Dude, if I could just get Larry Mack explaining the rear wedge adjustment graphic that Fox has had, it's never changed in the past like 3 or 4 years, and Larry Mack's explanation gets better every time they do it. I mean, it's just I could listen to him do it every single race, every single time he is involved in the broadcast. They make him do it, and at this point, I'll take it absolutely, 100% every day of the week, twice on Sundays.
It's like a podcast host doing like a Better Health or what's the wallet the
Sherry's
one wallet
Berries.
Sherry's Bear. We'll do Sherry's Berries. Yeah, it's like a podcast host reading off that sponsorship every week, and every week he just puts more and more into it. I love Larry Mack so much, but lot to look forward to this week with this show. Keep an eye out if there's some potential episodes dropping this weekend before your Memorial Day shenanigans, but we will break it down as always over here at Breaking Balls. 58 episodes down, my friend. 58, maybe more to go. We'll see.
Also, deep fans of the show, if you watched the post-race interview, you know how close Kyle Larson was to saying it. That's all I'm going to say. You know how close he was to saying it. And one day we're going to get it. It's going to be said, and we're going to clip it, and it's going to be our intro. It's coming, Bob. I can feel it.
He said busting balls, right? He was so close. It was so close.
I was like, I just want to take... He had to have said breaking in an interview somewhere, and I'm just going to clip those together, because at this point, we just deserve it. That was so close. It was criminal.
Whatever driver, trucks, Xfinity, or Cup, if they just say breaking balls, even if they don't mean to, in their interview at some point, we will devote our podcast to you. So that's out there in the universe. If this finds anyone, you know what you have to do. So say it in front of Jamie Little. Say it in front of anyone you need to.
Yeah.
Breaking balls.
Definitely breaking balls forever. If you've made it to this point, like, comment, subscribe. Please share this with a friend. We don't have any, so yeah, it would be great if you guys shared it. So
breaking balls.